Okay. Well, I'm not sure how relevant this subject is to everyone, but I kept trying to think of something else to teach on today, and Kenny had told me just to tweak another teaching I'd done at our home fellowship, and that is, I originally thought about it because the new year, around the new year time, and how everybody's, obsessed with, I got all these new goals for, weight loss and all this stuff. And it maybe is a subject that some people don't think about a lot. Maybe this is more of a female subject than a male, but I think it's still relevant because God does have a purpose for our bodies and what he wants us to do with them. I think our culture is really obsessed with, looking good and, not just being healthy or, feeling good in our bodies, but like what it looks like and, being perfect and things. And that's just not what the Bible tells us to focus on. And just like many other things that our culture just takes out of proportion and focuses on the wrong thing about, there are just so many things like that, this is just another subject. And so what I wanted to focus on with this was what God's purpose is in what we do and how we function in our bodies and how we can view them in a healthy way. We need to remember that our bodies are temples. It's more important what we do with the bodies that we have rather than obsess about what they aren't or what they look like. So a lot of the times we do focus on the limitations that we have in our current bodies. Like, it's frustrating because we're stuck in these bodies and we're looking at them and going, it's not functioning right. I've got all these things wrong with me. And I'm opening up the REV here so I can look up scriptures. But, I think that, we need to look at the Bible and see what it says God originally intended for us to be like. So I think if you start in Genesis chapter 1, and I'm just going to read the scriptures as I go here. You feel free to turn to them, but I may go through them kind of quickly. But I'm going to look, and I'm going to read out of REV just to get a accurate depiction here. That you can see that God originally designed our bodies to be perfect and well functioning. And it said in 1 verse 27, it says, "And God created the man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them." So part of the creation was that he made our bodies. He, he made in his image, and a lot of that, is our personalities and our spirits and what we're, our other things that other than our physicality. But also it says male and female, he created them, and that's definitely both a physical and a mental thing. So there's probably a whole theology on that I know not very much about. So someone feel free to to do a teaching on that. That would be interesting. But then on verse 31, on the day that he made man, God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And every other day I thought it was interesting is that he said it was good, when he made animals and the sun and the moon. But when he made man, he said that's very good. So God had originally made us to be very good and to, and he really did a good job when he designed the human body, soul, and spirit. And that's what we're made of. So even before the fall, Adam and Eve were so perfect. They were walking around naked and they were not ashamed. They weren't even aware that they were naked, and they didn't have any shame. And they were like, like my daughter who comes out of the bathtub completely naked, she has no, she's still she's 4 years old. She's still a little kid. She has no awareness of like, I'm naked. I'm not supposed to be out here showing everybody my whole body here. It's just like that. And they were like that, and they thought and there was nothing wrong with it, because God had made them beautiful and perfect and good. So, and yeah, and Donna said innocence. Yeah, they were totally innocent, and that was a good thing. That's how God intended for it to be. Unfortunately, with the fall of man, that's when the issue started. People started to be ashamed of themselves, not because of sin was what really caused us to have a body image problem. And so this is something that I don't think that it necessarily has been as throughout history has been as an obsession as it is now. It's really a big deal now, but I would say that sin definitely has had a toll on that. So if we go to Genesis chapter 3, verses 6 and 7, it says, when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And she gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. The eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loin coverings. It's really interesting here how they connected, their sin, which was it was a physical act, but it was a heart issue that physically manifested, and that they suddenly became aware, and they became ashamed of who they were and how God made them, because they realized that they weren't perfect and they weren't like God. And, they didn't, know what to do with themselves after that, because that's not what God intended for them to do. And I have a quote here from a lady named Hannah Anderson that I thought was good, but I'm not really quite sure who she is. I think she's maybe an author. She says, "We do not hate our bodies for what they are. We hate them for what they are not. We hate them for not being godlike." And I thought that was really interesting, because, Satan, he was mad that he wished to be like God and know everything. And, when he got, he got put in his place, and he didn't like that. So now he's going and trying to trick man into seeking after that. And now man has fallen for that trick and has tried to be like God. And now, because of the fall, ironically, the thing that, we tried to be like God actually made us fallen and less godly. But thankfully, God is working to redeem everything about us, our sin, our nature, and even our bodies. He's even got a plan for that. And so this is something that can give us hope. If we're, struggling in our flesh and with, pain, or, what we look like, there's a ton of things that we can have trouble with, and then just desires that are hard to overcome. So in 2 Corinthians 4:16 through 18, we get a picture of the future when God will redeem us. And it says, "So we are not discouraged, but even though our outward man is decaying, yet our inward man is renewed day by day. For our light momentary affliction is producing for us an everlasting weight of glory beyond all measure. Because we do not look at the things that are seen, but at the things that are not seen. For the things that are seen are temporary, but the things that are not seen are everlasting." So God's working to, he's working to make our inward man strong, so that, one day our, that we can just walk with him, and our inward man is getting renewed. We know our bodies are decaying every day. That's really depressing, but but God has a plan for that. because of Christ's, resurrection and defeat of death, we will also be raised from the dead. Our bodies will be transformed, and that's in 1 Corinthians 15. I'm going to go there for a second. And then in verses 51 through 53, it says, "Look, I tell you a sacred secret. We will not all sleep, but we will all be changed. In a moment, in the blink of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised incorruptible, and we will be changed. For this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality." And I think that's what we've been seeking here is we sit, we sit around thinking, man, this is not right. My body should not be doing this. I should not be in pain. Maybe you're thinking I'm a little bit young to be worried about my mortality or something, but gosh, just the things you go through, the things you have to deal with in life, no matter what age you are, pain, gosh, having a child does some weird things to your body that I won't go into here, just to have some tact. But all those things that we can look forward to having an immortal body. We just think about that. This is I think the reason that we are so sad and grieved about death and dying and pain is because God didn't want us to die. He wants us to live, and it doesn't feel right to us because we're made for we were made to be originally immortal and live, and God wants to, and so that's what God's been doing this whole time, is to get us back to that original way of living and living forever. So if it doesn't feel right to you, it's not right. It's not what God intended. So but we have some hope to look forward to. So in the meantime, we have imperfect bodies and imperfect minds and all these things that we struggle with. And so what should we do with that? What should we do with the bodies that God has given us? And I'd say the first thing that we can do, we're supposed to do with is we're supposed to view our bodies as temples that we can honor God with. And for that, we can go to 1 Corinthians 6:19 through 20. And it says, "Or do you not know that your body is a sanctuary of the Holy Spirit that is in you, which you have from God, and you are not your own? For you were bought with a price, therefore glorify God in your body." And so that's in the context of sexual immorality. So, we're not to use our bodies to just, satisfy our own flesh, but we're to use them to honor God. So, that's a big thing is God gave us these bodies. And now that we are born again, we have the Holy Spirit living inside of us. So we have a responsibility to utilize that in a way that's godly and to, honor God in our actions. And then in Romans 12, it talks about our bodies can be instruments of sacrifice and worship, which I think is a great privilege. I think it's, it doesn't sound fun. Sorry, I can't get to the verse here. REV is a little bit harder to get to because you have to type in the stuff. Maybe someone knows a faster way, but I was just trying to get a better translation on some of these verses. And it says, "I urge you therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy, pleasing to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to the pattern of this age, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you can test and approve what the will of God is, the thing that is good and pleasing and perfect." So, God gives us this great privilege to just, basically it says it's our reasonable service. It's reasonable for God to expect us to serve him and to give our lives up for him because he's given us everything. And so we, we can't pay him back for that, but we at least owe him, to sacrifice our bodies as to his service. And we can also not just our bodies, but our minds are renewed, and that we can know what to do. It says that we can approve, we can test and approve what the will of God is. So that way we know what to do in these bodies and that we have, and what we should be doing with our lives. So God's definitely given us a huge gift there to be able to do that. I don't think that people that don't have the Spirit and are not, followers of Christ and haven't made him their Lord, I don't think they can really do that. It's just it's just amazing privilege God's given us. God also says, this may be the same thing, but in 1 Corinthians 10:31, it just says that we can use it for God's glory. I think, so you can glorify God in your body, the other verse. So just reiterate that. Oh, but it says, therefore, in 1 Corinthians 10:31, it says, therefore, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do everything to the glory of God. And I guess the reason that I found this verse interesting was, just simple things every day. That doesn't seem like a big deal. I think people are thinking, what are these huge things I can do for God? Can I, do I need to start a ministry? Do I need to go and heal a whole bunch of people? Do I need to have a huge revival in a tent and have thousands of people come to Christ, like Billy Graham or whatever? And that's not really, required of everyone. Some people certainly have that calling, but you know what? It says, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, and now this is in a certain context, but it makes a point that your daily life, everything you do, can be for the glory of God. You're eating a meal. Give thanks to God. Be thankful that you have a meal to eat. I mean, gosh, that's amazing. That every day we have meals to eat here. A lot of people don't, and just whatever we're doing, playing with our kids, going outside in nature, we can be thankful, and we can give thanks to God and give glory to him, and give him the credit for all the good things in our lives, and instead of not noticing and just kind of, that's just what it, that's normal. So the little things, and also in exalting God, I think it exalts God to exalt Christ. So in Philippians 1:20, it says, as it is my eager expectation and hope that I will not be put to shame in any way, but with all boldness, now as always, Christ will be magnified in my body, whether by life or by death. So that's a whole other passage. But yeah, our goal should be that the Christ will be shown as that through our lives, that Christ will be shown. People will see the Christ in us, and people will know him because of our lives and how we reflect him and his glory and who he is. He is our example that we are to pattern our lives after. And also, this is maybe a totally different subject, but I think it shows that God does honor the body. So, and he shows how the body as a metaphor for the church. And so in 1 Corinthians 12, sorry, I'm trying to go to it again. Verse 27, it just says, and there's a whole passage on this, but I'm just going to use this verse just to make the point. Now you are the body of Christ, and individually parts of it. And that just kind of, that whole passage is just talking about how everything is, functioning, and God made our bodies to be functional, and just showing this metaphor that these parts do these things, and we all work together and to do all this. work and to glorify him. And it shows how each part has a use. And so I think God, wants us to use every part of us that we can, every functioning part to do his work. So in conclusion, I really think that what we need to remember is that our body is a vessel of the Spirit of God, that it can be used for his purposes. And what's most important is not the outside. I think, man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. God's not focused on outward things. Like we humans get really focused, even if we don't think we are. We look at people and we think certain things about them, who they are. And a lot of times we find out we were totally wrong about people. But we need to be looking to the inward part of our body. We are holding, holy things. We have the Spirit of God in there. So, we're just a vessel. We are holding that, and that's a great responsibility. So that is who we are. So I just hope everyone remembers that and just live your life in remembrance that you have a great responsibility to live your life in that manner to glorify God. That's all I got.
Well, you were making me think of all kinds of things, Laura.
Huh.
Good things to think about.
Yeah. Well, if you have anything you want to share on it, feel free.
Well, Dan, we were talking to Dan, I don't know, a day or two ago, and he was talking about the time period, that we're in, and all the temptations and the trials and that we go through, kind of symbolically being analogous to the wilderness time that the Israelites had to go through. And so, you were making me think about, you were talking about how we're temples of God's Spirit that we have in us, and our purpose and goal that we should have is to honor and glorify God. And so it was making me think about that, and how how we just really need to keep our eyes focused on him. We've got a choice that we have to make, whether we're going to focus on the world and all the things that the world tell us and about what's important, all the temptations that we have in that regard, or whether we're going to focus on the kind of things that you were talking about, and on spiritual things. And we have it's kind of a contest, or I don't know exactly how you put it, a wilderness time or whatever that we have here, where we're being tested, we're kind of tried and tested as to what we're going to do. Are we going to focus on the spiritual, or are we going to focus on the worldly? And I know for me, I want to focus on the spiritual, not on the things that the world is trying to condition me into thinking and focusing on.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, what you're focusing on, a lot of it is, I had another thought, it just is pressuring you to focus on honoring yourself. Like, why would you focus on your outside except to get glory for yourself?
Right.
When you focus on your inner man, that's not, that's from God. And, not that, like we just said, your outward appearance is from God too, but it's, your flesh is fallen and everything. And so, we need to be focused on honoring God with what we're doing, and stop trying to get glory for ourselves. And I know I struggle with that sometimes too. So that's what I need to focus on too.
And there's a balance to that, because, Paul does talk about, he talks about how, physical exercise profits a little, but growing in godliness profits a lot. There's a balance to, we do have to live in this world, and so, doing what we can to keep our health, to stay, healthy as much as we can, so that we can be that vessel for the Lord, to glorify and honor Him, is a good thing. But it can, easily cross the line into where it's like what you're talking about. It's more about glorifying self, and more about self-focus and self-absorption than it is glorifying God.
Bruce and Nicole have their hand up.
It's kind of funny, Laura, that you bring this up, because my devotional that I did on Friday was almost exactly what you just talked about. It was about how you don't have to do anything huge, and basically look within your 4 square walls of what you can do to bless someone else or to help someone else. Some people need to do something, are called to do something extravagant, but it really doesn't take a lot to see a person like that's having a bad day that you cross by, just to say hi to them or something, just to give them love. And so it's kind of funny that you brought that up, but it's been making me think about that a lot, about how, sometimes it is very overwhelming, because everybody thinks, you got to do something extravagant all the time, and you basically need to go build a church and all this stuff. And it's not that. It's just everyday people that you encounter, and you just show them love and ask them how you can help them. And it just brings so much satisfaction to you versus you just making everything about yourself. And so that's really cool that you did that teaching. I like it.
Michelle has her hand up.
Laura, when you opened up and you were talking about like New Year's resolutions and stuff like that, I used to be a big list maker, that I would have all these, things that I wanted to do to improve upon myself, and that, they all had good reasons and intents and, stuff like that. But when it came from me, it was almost like, this is work you need to do. This is, there's an effort involved to, ensure that you stay on track with these things. And that, thinking about it from the perspective that you were teaching, all of a sudden it introduced this aspect of joy, this idea that, whatever it is you want to do, I want to, maybe I want to exercise more, instead of doing it, for my health or so that I look physically better or whatever. I want to do it so that I can serve God better, and that it kind of shifts the focus that way, and it introduces this aspect of joy that even in doing these things that might not directly connect with other people right away, that you can see the godly result that can come out of it. And I think that that's really motivating. I loved your teaching today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, I like the joy aspect. I hadn't really connected that, but yeah, that definitely, there's definitely a lot more joy in glorifying God than yourself. Because that's genuine, that's deserved. Ourselves, we're, God loves us and treasures us, but He's the one that deserves all the glory for it, not us. So that's a joyful thing to be able to honor Him.
Donna Catuli has her hand up.
I've always wanted to say this out loud because I've thought of it mucho grando many times. What in the world was in that manna that God poured out to those Israelites to keep them alive? Have you ever thought about that? It must have been filled with the greatest nutrition and chemical compounds that the body needed in order for them to survive in the wilderness And as I pondered this kind of thinking that I have about the Lord and his provisions, I'm aghast at how many times I'm distracted, by my own busy mind, being too busy in my mind to really think thoroughly through, think it all the way through to his provisions about the resurrection of our bodies. And, especially during this time, I know it's not the real deal, but a lot of people are focused on Lenten fish and whatever. It's about the sacrifice that Jesus paid in full for us. And it's that time of the year, Easter Keister, Easter bunnies and eggs. I don't know what that has to do with Jesus, but to get our minds off of the craziness of Easter bunnies, just think about that, God's provision for our flesh, whether it's herbs or green food or whatever it is to keep us alive until that day approaches that we're going to be with him, because our final destination here is not we're going to be transferred from the way that we are to the way that he wanted us to be all along in the kingdom. And they'll be eating and drinking there too. But one of the things, as Laura was teaching, that came to my mind, and it's one of the simple truths, and that is the truth of the cardinal mind, the natural mind, in our flesh, the way the Adam nature is in us. We kind of flop around in understanding the will of God to take our eyes off of beauty, brains, and bucks, because that's what the world's all about, Hollywood. Beauty, brains, and bucks. Well, I'm out. Okay, I ain't got none of that going on. However, the inner spirit, and I'm thinking of Romans 8, where it talks a lot about the putting on of the Lord Jesus and the mind of Christ, and the putting off of the the coward in me, the old man nature, and what that does for you, because you refocus. It's kind of like Nicole talks a lot about, brain rewiring, and I think that that's the renewed mind summed up. But isn't that an interesting thought? What was in that manna? I don't know why that strikes me. And I've always thought about there had to be nutrition in there to keep them alive. Angel food, there had to be. How else would they have thrived, on a teaspoon of water? But I don't know. To me, it just builds the heart of God in me for the human body to survive. It's a fun fact. It's a fun thought to, be illuminated on. But that's the way my mind works. And I've always thought that the provisions of the Lord were as best as he could give us to survive on this earth until that coming day of the resurrection, where we will be perfected and be just like Jesus. Just a fun thought, Laura, to add to the repertoire of what you're sharing.
I like that. Just kind of the provision to keep us alive until we get to that point where he can make us alive forever. That is a cool thought. He's sustaining us, and it may not be perfect. It may not it's not going to keep us alive forever, but he's got us here for a while for a purpose. And so he's providing for that. So pretty amazing that he does that for us.
Laura, you made me think earlier about the verses that Lisa brought up. That in 1 Timothy 4, where it says, he's giving instruction about teaching, and he says in verse 7, but have nothing to do with irreverent and silly myths. Rather, train yourself in godliness, for training of the body has a limited benefit, but godliness is beneficial in every way. Training in godliness, in other words, is beneficial in every way, since it holds promise for the present life and also for the life to come. I was thinking that whole time about.
Didn't you say a while back that godliness means devotion to God or something like that?
It means doing. It does mean devotion to God. It means to do all the things that God wants us to do. Mm. It's kind of a word that has a lot of meaning behind it. But basically, it means being like God, and in the sense of his character and holiness. And I was just thinking that, it's so true that our culture, and I think this is probably true of most cultures, is so focused on the body, and in our culture is focused on body and success and the outward appearance, not just the physical outward appearance, but status, appearance, and stuff like that.
Prestige.
Yeah, prestige. Things like you said that are honoring of oneself, that are glorifying of oneself. Whereas, God is saying that training in godliness is beneficial both now and in the future. You may get something temporarily out of training in, physical ways. Could be training in what was it? Donna said, beauty and brains
and bucks.
And bucks. Yeah. You can train in all of those things. You can do stuff,
The 3 Bs.
and it might have some temporary benefit, but it's not a fulfilling or lasting benefit. Training in your character is training in godliness. It was really good. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm just going to do a confession here and say that, like, sometimes I really get sucked into that stuff. Like, it starts with an interest in, it sounds stupid, like fashion and stuff, but then, and that's fine to be into that. And it's kind of fun for a while, but then you get sucked into it. It's like a black hole of trying to, I don't look good enough for this, or, when are you satisfied with it? So how much money do you have to spend on all, on all that? And then thinking, it's easy to get, I totally get the status and success thing. I can get sucked into that too, because, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I've never had a career, and, I have a college degree, but, I've never really used it for anything. So it's really easy to start being obsessed with that stuff, and then realizing later, what, that stuff does not matter that much. I mean, it's important to be able to, to function in the world and to get by and have things and all that. But it's like, let God provide that stuff for you. Stop trying to get that for yourself and get the glory for yourself. And then, just let it be, so that's something that's, part of my reason why I wanted to share that, is just because that's something that I, struggle with sometimes. So I figured I might not be the only one in the group that deals with that. And, lest it be seen as like I said, lest it be seen as a girl thing. I think some of the guys could maybe relate, maybe not so much on the looks thing or whatever, but maybe on, career status, trying to be somebody people respect and, whatever. I don't know. Maybe you guys can just tell me more about that. But I know guys tend to struggle with getting their worth out of what they do and stuff. So I don't know, just some things to think about. Just, I don't know. Just wanted to be real with you guys, why I even came up with that subject.
Les and Lisa have their hand up. You're still muted. You want me to unmute you?
I think I can get.
There you go. Oh. We're fighting over your mute button.
There we go. Did it work?
Now,
Yeah, my bar at the bottom got bigger and I couldn't see it. When you were talking in the beginning about Adam and Eve in the garden, and it took me back to a book that was very helpful to me years ago by a guy named John Bradshaw called Healing the Shame That Binds You. And in the beginning of his book, he talks about the original sin, and it really, really made sense to me
because he talks about shame, that shame can be good and it can be healthy and it lets you know you're human and you have limitations, but that the basic human condition is toxic shame. And he equates that to the original sin. And he talks about Adam and Eve in the garden, but if you go to what is truly the original sin, where with Lucifer's given all these wonderful things and he has all these wonderful powers, and he looks at himself and he says, it's not enough to be who I am, I want to be God. And so that's exactly what he does with Adam and Eve in the garden. And I think when I read before what he says to them in the garden, I always kind of focused on the knowing good and evil part. But what he actually says is, God knows when you eat, your eyes will be open and you will be like God. And so the sort of the thought is that the sin is to say what I am is not enough. God held something back. I want to be more than I am. And I went and grabbed his book because I really loved it. And he talks about, he says the symbolic description of Adam and Eve is a description of the human condition. The unconditional love and acceptance of self seems to be the hardest task for all humankind. Refusing to accept our real selves, we try to create a more powerful selves, or give up and become less than human. The result is a lifetime of cover-up and secrecy, and hiding is the basic cause for suffering, or hiding who we really are. So what Laura was talking about a minute ago, you're gonna work on being beautiful, or work on being fit, or working on, there's just 1,000 ways to be distracted and into becoming more than what we are, or better than what we are. And I guess what it makes me think about is, you can't just go to, I'm going to do it all for God. I really suck, but I'm going to give every sucky part of me to God. I think that, I think you have to love yourself right where you're at and offer everything that you are to God in love. And I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that the original lie is, what you are is not enough. It's not okay. What God made you is not okay. You have to be more than that. And I don't think God held back. I mean, I think he made us exactly what he wanted us to be, and that we should love ourselves and give everything that we are in that capacity. Then we're better to give to God. So I don't know. I think sometimes I look around at what other people's gifts are, and I think, wow, their gift is awesome. And what I have to get, then you get into this part where, or I get into this part where, that what I am is not enough, or, all my faults and failures. But if you get out of that and be who God made you to be, and accept that he made you to be exactly who he wants you to be, then what you have to offer is so much more, because every act of love and kindness makes a huge difference. So I don't know. I just thought his contention was very, very interesting.
John gave me this book once. It was years ago. I don't know if you remember this or not. It was back when the kids were little. And it was a book about mindfulness, but it was from a Christian standpoint. There's a lot of books about that are more kind of like Eastern religion, sort of from Eastern religion. But this was from a Christian standpoint. And it was about, kind of what you were talking about, Laura, about whatever that you're doing it as an offering of love to the Lord, and to people around you. And so this book was talking about, I don't know, actually, apparently this must, if I remember correctly, some order of Catholicism, I don't know if it was like Jesuit or whatever, but some order of Catholicism, this was like a discipline or something that they would do, and it was kind of like a Christian mindfulness thing where it was disciplining your mind to rather than thinking about the past or worrying about the future, but to focus on, what you're doing, whatever you're doing right then and there. And, the simplest things, whether it be changing a baby's diaper, you were talking about being a stay-at-home mom, changing a baby's diaper, or, and Lisa's case, the job that she has, people that she's working with, something that she's doing, for one of those people, or, preparing a meal for your family or whatever it is, that it brings, it's an act of love that serves a need and blesses people, and we tend to overlook those things. And like you were saying, people will think, well, I don't really have significance. What I'm doing, is not that significant, and thinking in terms of more grand ideas of, I don't know, like Billy Graham and having a huge evangelistic revival with 1 million people there or something like that. But our lives don't have to be that, I don't know what's the right word. We can be people that do things that are not out there, the whole world is, we're not famous. In other words, we're kind of like more in obscurity or whatever. We're not like famous people, but it doesn't mean that even the small acts that we do don't have a big impact on people's lives around us and do something for God. So actually, I wish I could remember now about that book. I don't know if I even still have it anymore. It would be kind of neat to reread it again. But do you remember that book?
Not at all.
You gave it to me because you gave it to me because I was I was going, oh God, I just feel like all I do is nurse babies and change diapers, or stuff along those lines. And so
it take me a while to try to remember.
You gave me that book.
I can't believe he can't remember the name of it. I'm sure he's only read a couple of books since then.
Yeah.
Well, that book is in the past, and I'm not worried about the past. So.
Okay. Maybe I can find it again. I'll do some Google searching.
It sounds like a good book.
It was a good book.
I learned my colors in kindergarten, but I still remember them.
Lisa, I think the word you were looking for is grandiose. It isn't so grandiose to be changing diapers and all. Isn't as grandiose as what like Billy Graham did.
Yeah, right. But who knows? You could be changing the diaper of a Billy Graham or something. I don't.
That's what I was thinking when you were talking. I was thinking somebody changed Jesus' diapers and somebody raised Billy Graham.
Yeah.
And those things all mattered.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all grandiose.
I was thinking Billy Graham probably had to do a lot of unglamorous things that nobody sees either. I mean,
yeah,
he probably had to hug some stinky homeless people and, I don't know, pick up trash or something. After one of his events, I don't know, something. It's not always as glamorous as it seems, I think. And he also sacrificed a lot of his family time that he wished he could have had back. And so,
Bruce and Nicole got their hand up.
Yeah, Laura, I really like the verse you use in 1 Corinthians 6:19 and 20, because it really reminds us that, our bodies are really God's. He's giving us them to use, but they're really God's, pretty much is what I get from that. And a couple analogies that kind of come to mind are, say you have someone that's really important to you and they're letting you borrow their car or maybe house sit. You're not gonna treat that vehicle like it's your own. You're not gonna be doing burnouts in it and stuff like that. You're gonna return it to them with a full tank of gas, and you're gonna take care when you drive it. You're not gonna be eating in it. You're gonna have a totally different mindset when you're in that vehicle. And I think maybe that's kind of how we should think. Remember that these bodies that we have, they're really God's bodies. That He's given us kind of to use, and Nicole was also saying, you know, like for instance, when she works out, you know, she works out for herself. But I think it also, if we have, you know, you just kind of change our motives a little bit and our thinking, you know, well, I'm going to work out, but why am I working out? You know, I want to feel better. I can be a better Christian if I feel better and I have more energy. You know, I can be a better wife, a better mom. So we don't have to be so hard on ourselves, I think, in that area, you know, if we just kind of change our motives a little bit. But it definitely gets me thinking, you know, that this body isn't really mine. You know, I'm kind of just managing it. And I think it's really a healthy mindset to have. That was a good teaching.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, Bruce. That our motivation can be some sort of selfish attention sort of thing, or it can be, I'm taking care of what God's given me because, you know, it's valuable because it's God's, and I can take care of it and be of more, you know, be more useful, beneficial to Him by doing that.
Right, kind of like the whole money thing too, you know, He gives us money, we manage it. It's not really ours.
I don't know how friendly I'd be by the end of the day if I didn't work out with Lydia in the middle of the day. It is my massive stress relief in the middle of the day.
Yeah, that actually is. I mean, it's really good because it improves your you know, brain chemistry and stuff, so that you're less stressed, and
it just gives me more energy. I mean, it gives me energy. It kind of resets my mind, resets my day for me. And I don't know, for me, it's always been really healthy. I know when I don't work out for like 2 days in a row, I mean, granted, I try to work out at least like 15 minutes a day, but like if I don't work out for like a couple days in a row, Bruce will be like, "Why are you so crabby?" And he's like, and I would be like, "Oh, I need to go work out." It's just, I don't know, I've just gotten so used to it now.
You could probably take it too far, you know, like
day.
Laura was saying,
well, yeah,
with the fashion thing, you know, it can lead to, you know, bad things, and it can consume you. But
well, yeah, I see that because when I first started doing hair, one of the first salons that I worked at, I mean, I was always going shopping, had to have one of the latest of whatever it was, like latest clothes, everything had to be name brand, like, and then as I got older, I'm just like, that is just not worth it anymore. It's too expensive, and B, it's just not a priority anymore. Like, it's funny how your priorities change and how things do change, but yeah, being stuck in the hair beauty industry is a huge problem, and it can absolutely consume you. I mean, with the newest products, the newest whatever it is, it is hard. It does kind of suck you in sometimes, so you gotta be really careful with it.
I remember back when my brother and I were big into lifting heavy weights, and it just became addicting. I mean, that's all you would do. Everything that you ate was based on that. I mean, your whole life was just lifting weights, and, you know, how big are you going to get? How much muscle? And like, that's all we talk about, and that's all we did, you know? So that could be an extreme.
Hey, Nicole, do you ever use Lydia to work out?
Yes, I do a lot, actually.
I always do leg lifts with the grandbabies, and so they'll come over and go, "Do you want me to help you work out?" I'm like, "Come here, we'll do airplanes."
Yes, I have. Bruce actually has a couple of videos. She's really good at yoga, which is so funny to me, but she's really good at it. I'll be doing yoga or doing a workout in the living room, and usually how I do it is, it's real glamorous, I tell you. I have cartoons on the TV, and I have my workout on the iPad. And I'm working out on my iPad, watching that. She's watching cartoons. And I'll work out, and then all of a sudden she'll be like 5 minutes in it, and you'll see her doing lifts, and she'll just go like this, and then she'll do some down dog.
And she's walking underneath Nicole while Nicole's like doing this.
You hold,
triangle thing.
you
And
hold-
she's walking underneath of her.
yeah, you hold planks a little longer in our house.
So you don't squash a baby? Yeah. Yeah, I got my grandbabies to plank a little bit. They don't hang in there though.
Yeah, I try, and she does it all on her own.
That's awesome. I like the classic stretch lady on PBS. 22 minutes and you're done. When I first started doing it, I thought it just was kind of super easy, but I found it makes me feel much better, like loose and pain-free, and I really like her.
Yeah, because she does a lot of yoga stuff. I have every once in a while have seen her a little bit, and yeah, I do like doing.
She wouldn't call it yoga, but I've had issues with my joints. They have a tendency to get damaged joints, and I don't know why. And I find that she's really, really helpful on that. So I really like her. I bought a set of her videos off Amazon, so when I'm not, on the weekend or something, I'll use that. 22 minutes, super easy. And the other day I went to put my shoes on. I mean, you just don't notice that your body changes over time and you feel better. So I went to put my shoes on. I had my standing desk up, so I just bent over and put my shoes on and tied them like touching the floor and all this. And then I went, wow, I didn't know I could do that. That's awesome. But you just feel better, and I like it. So.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that, because I was doing yoga almost every single day, and I was like, wow, I can bend all these weird ways that I was so hard in the beginning. This is crazy.
Yeah, I love to be able to get up and down on the ground and be that grandma that plays with the babies, It's fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think one of my proudest moments, we're older than my daughter-in-law's parents a little bit. And so my granddaughter in Oklahoma, it's been probably a year ago. But she said to her parents, she drew a picture and said, I want to send it to Grandma. And Chelsea said, well, I'll mail it to Mimi. And she goes, no, not that grandma, the young grandma. I went, yeah. Oh, it's just because, I play with them.
Now, don't get a big head over that, Lisa.
No, it just keeps me motivated because I've had so many stupid injuries and dealt with a lot of pain. And I found that if I just move all the time, that I don't have pain. And so I move all the time.
That's the same way with my neck issues. As I figured out once I started doing a lot of yoga and working out, it definitely, a lot of those lower back and neck issues that I've had a lot of it's gone. It's very awesome.
Yeah, that and I've tried to develop a little wisdom. A number of years ago, Zach pulled me on an inner tube behind his jet ski, and I ended up I couldn't pull my body up after I slid off Anyway, long story short, I partially tore my shoulders and the back of my biceps. So, you would think you would go, wow, I'm getting pulled behind something isn't a good idea for me. But 3 years ago, I go to my brother's and I'm like, sure, I'll try water skiing. End up with a torn labrum and pulled hams. I don't know what it is. Other people can do these things, but it does not work for my body. So you'd think I would go, not a good idea for me. But I was seeing this therapist for the shoulder issue a number of years ago, and a very brief version of the story is I had gone home and I wanted to dig up some hosta and I couldn't get them out of the ground. So I went into the shed and I got a big old pickaxe and I went over to it and I took that axe and I was about ready to swing it because I was going to get the hosta out of the ground because that's what I do. And I went to swing it and I stopped and I thought, if I do this, I'm going to screw my shoulders up worse than they are. And I put it down. It made me really, really frustrated. So I went back to the therapist and I told her this story. And I said, it is so frustrating. I said, because, a few years ago, I would have gotten those out of the ground. And I used to be a force to be reckoned with, and now I'm not. And she looked at me and she said, I don't know, Lisa. I think it sounds like wisdom. And I think wisdom is a force to be reckoned with. So I I love it. So now when I'm going to do something stupid, I go, not wise. Wisdom is a force to be reckoned with. Yeah, it took me another injury to actually learn that, but now I stop myself. Didn't do the upside down ride with the grandbabies last week at the park. That was wisdom.
You've got people who can get the hosta out for you, don't you?
Yeah, but the time, sometimes it's hard for them to find time, and I like to do things, but
Les could get the hosta out probably.
Yeah, or I could be more patient and, water the ground a lot and then take it out. Yeah, he can, but he's pretty busy too. So.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You can be impatient and you're just going to get it out no matter what's going on. But
yeah, I have done things that's sort of my way. I remember Les built a set of bunk beds for me once. I needed to move them. And of course, he was working 10, 12-hour days. And so I'd lay on the ground and shove them with my feet and hold my hand against the wall and push it all the way across the room. And I had the feeling of when I moved the immovable, you're like, yeah, I did it. Never mind that your back hurts. There is that mentality. We call it a schmaltz thing. That's my maiden name. By God, to get it done. It might not be wise, but so yeah, I'm working on wisdom. I don't want to get hurt anymore.
Like a Yiddish word for, used in that context, a Yiddish word for something not wise to do.
Yeah. Well, actually, you're probably familiar with the word schmaltz. We laugh. We made the movies it means sickeningly sentimental or Jewish mayo, depending on the usage of the word. But yeah, there was one in the movie with Father of the Bride. And when they're all running around because the mother's pregnant and the daughter's pregnant, he's like, what are we, the schmaltz family? We thought that was funny.
We were on the beach in Florida one time at her family reunion. Well, one of the sisters all had family shirts, T-shirts made up, and they all said Schmaltz University on the back. And so I turned around from the beach from where the girls were, and I headed the other way, and this couple stopped me and said, hey, what university is that? We've been looking that up on our iPhone, and we can't locate it. I said, see those ladies over there? They are Schmaltz University. It was pretty funny.
I wanted to ask a couple of people that haven't spoken up yet. Donna, did you have anything you wanted to add? Donna Weedman?
No, I was going to say I had some friends that were here this past week, and they're not young people, and they're on a special diet to lose weight. And they're Christians, and so it was kind of interesting because what Nicole taught is I saw that with them, that they were more concerned about the outward appearance than the inward appearance. So I brought up what Sarah taught a couple days ago about miracles. So I changed their focus, but it's interesting how people get caught up in what the outside is and forget about what God placed in the inside that we can manifest. And that was a great teaching. I was blessed by it. And I now have a sister that's staying with me. She's going to have surgery this week, and she's had rheumatoid arthritis since she was 25 years old. So her body is in very bad shape. But she's a Christian, and she's also a nurse. So this week has been really bad because she can hardly walk. And I keep praying for that new body, for her and for us, so that we can manifest what God's placed within us. It's really hard when you're in a lot of pain and suffering. But she does the best she can. She's a worship leader at her church. So it's just amazing what God does.
Amen. Stephen, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, we're just talking about, we sort of started talking about, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. We started talking about, our bodies and like, how much, I guess, how much attention we spend on like our physical well-being or whatever. But for whatever reason, I might be off track, but throughout my entire Christian life, I'm almost 50 now. I'll be 50 next December. In 3 John 2, I just looked it up on, 1 second. I was trying to pull it up in the REV because I thought I've always thought of it a certain way that it's real important. Let's see. I'm pulling up the REV online. So 3 John 2, and it says, "Beloved," okay, it's the third epistle of John, the elder to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth. Beloved, I pray that in all respects you are doing well, and that you are in good health, just as it is well with your soul. For I rejoiced greatly when the brothers came and testified to your faithfulness to the truth, even as you are walking in truth. I have no greater joy than this, that I hear my children are walking in truth. But that actually reads a little different in the REV than, say, if I pull it up in the ESV. I gotta put on my glasses. Is it 3 John 2 in the ESV? That's what I've got here. That's my main Bible I read out of, ESV. Somebody, I've never actually ever settled on what Bible I felt like was the best for me. I knew the King James was incredibly awkward, and then I've met people who swear by the King James. You got to read the King James. And it's like, okay, I don't speak Old English. Let's see here. 3 John 2. Da, 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 da. Beloved, I pray that all may go well with you, and that you may be in good health as it goes well with your soul. Well, anyway, so yeah, there's a balance. The point I was trying to make is there's a balance, and it depends on why you're focused on feeling good. If you're self-absorbed or whatever, or if you're trying to be physically fit so you can be as productive and efficient as possible, like serving God. I mean, everything we do is can be to give glory to God, like just doing our jobs as good as they can be done, not for self exaltation, but to set a standard of excellence. I mean, God even encourages us to approve things that are excellent. He encourages us to control our minds and think about things that are lovely, a blessing, whatever's honest, of good report, all that stuff. I mean, I know I'm speaking to mature Christians. So the world, has a habit of giving everybody the slack hand, whereas the Christian should always be willing to go above and beyond and, represent excellence to the glory of God. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. It's like, wow, what is it with this person? They're not your typical average Joe. There's something excellent about them. What is it inside of you that makes you different than the world? So anyway, that's for me, I'm a window cleaner, and I've also been a bodybuilder, and I was really obsessed with bodybuilding when I was a teenager. And I focused way too much attention on that kind of thing. But there's also some advantages of being, healthy, well taken care of. I mean, recently I was feeling terrible. I went out and I was trying to get the house ready, for example, just to help my mother, who's elderly, to get her house ready to sell. And I would go out and rake gumballs, rake leaves. She has about an acre here, the place that she's trying to get cleaned up. And that's one thing that I can do. I mean, I can't sort through all of her stuff and decide like what she's going to keep and what she's not going to keep. That's not something I can do. But I was thinking about like, how can I play my part? What can I do for her? And so I was out raking up the latest crop of gumballs under this huge gumball tree that's in the backyard, and raking leaves and picking up sticks and all that stuff. And after about an hour or so, or two of that, maybe 2 hours, I would come in and actually feel like I needed to take a nap for the rest of the day. So I told my mom, I said, I haven't been taking my good vitamins lately. And I deliberately went and spent about $40, at the vitamin shop to get some really good vitamins, because for whatever reason, my bodily energy was just like, the batteries were going dead like way too soon, It's like, just ridiculous, right? So I don't go to the gym, or I don't focus on my nutrition as a self-absorbed thing. I think of like being able to function and being able to like be a blessing to other people and not be a burden to people that I'm surrounded by. This really this topic really speaks loudly to me, because I saw my mom for like over 20 years be under the burden of a sick person. My stepdad, who passed away, he had smoked. He had not controlled his, he was addicted to smoking, and he smoked till he was like, from the time he was 16 till the time he was like 59 years old. And then from the time he was, 62 or so, in that age range, up until about 84, my mom basically had to be his nurse, because, he had allowed his health to go so far down. He was actually a tremendous burden to, an individual, which would happen to be my mom, for a couple of decades. And so it's just, we have a certain amount of time. I guess the point I'm trying to make is maybe the Lord will come back in the next 5 minutes, which would be super cool. But until then, as the song goes, until then, we need to be of a ready mind. How can you be of a ready mind if you're not healthy and feeling well and kind of in control of the situation spiritually as a spiritual athlete? That's really what was on my heart. I just wanted to share that, like there can be a healthy, proper spiritual, motive for feeling good and being in the game, in the spiritual game we play every day. We're contenders in the game, right? That's the last time I read. That's what I know about. We are considered spiritual athletes in a spiritual battle. We need to be on top of our game.
Are you still helping your mom get ready to move?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Salvation Army came yesterday, this huge box truck.
Yeah.
And they took a lot of heavy things. I got my mom a bunch of boxes. That was so timely. I had a limited amount of time a few days ago to run to town. The day I went to get some vitamins, and then I had gone by Aldi to get some groceries my mom wanted. And just as I was leaving, I almost forgot about picking up cardboard boxes. And I had asked at a local grocery store about cardboard boxes. And I knew my mom needed a bunch of good boxes. I didn't know where they were going to come from. It's like I don't know of anybody that keeps track of the box policy for every store in town, so you know where the boxes are, right? Every store has got their different policy of when boxes are available, when they crush them, blah blah blah. And so I thought, man, do I have to go through all this traffic and go into every store trying to find boxes? And I knew I needed boxes. So when I left Aldi, I was sitting at the signal light at a major intersection. And lo and behold, my eyes were just drawn to this row of dumpsters next to this, the end of the strip mall across the street. And I saw all these broken down boxes in the dumpsters. And I thought, score, there they are. So I didn't miss a beat. I mean, it had to be God. God just kind of like energized my mind to like see those boxes, like, look at those boxes. They're all laid up there, just waiting for you. So I was sitting at a signal light and just conveniently got out of the turn lane back into the straight ahead lane and went across the street through the signal light. And there's all these boxes. I mean, it couldn't have been more efficient. It was just boom, 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 boom. I loaded up the back of my little truck, with plenty of boxes. My mom still has plenty of boxes right now because of that. And there was no effort on my part. My mind was thinking, oh, I've got this huge task of going from store to store to store, you know, to find these boxes. It's going to be this horrendous task, you know, and all this inefficient time. And there was nothing inefficient about it. It was like, boom, there's your boxes.
That's awesome. I was just going to say, you mentioned that it was difficult, you know, like it would be hard for you to help her sort things. I learned a lesson from one of my sisters when we were going through it with my mom, because my style is full speed ahead, let's get this crap out of here. That doesn't work for everybody. And my sister Jennifer sat with my mom, sat at her feet, and she would pick up an item and say, do you love it or would you like to share it? And mom would go, well, so-and-so gave it to me. And she would tell her the whole story of the item. And then she would say, but I think I can share it. So Jennifer would put it in the Goodwill box. And then she'd pick up the next item. And mom would tell her this story. And that's how they sorted things. And I thought, thank you, God, because Jennifer has way more patience than me. But I did learn a lesson, and I was able to do that with her the next time we moved. You know, she had to downsize twice. And it was really, really, I thought it was very loving and very kind and a really great idea.
Dan, any thoughts?
Nope.
We like to hear from you, Dan.
Everybody's having trouble unmuting today. I can unmute you. Hang on. Let me do it. Oh,
It
wait.
didn't do anything. What's going on with
It's
that?
not unmuting. Huh.
That's weird.
Okay, so
Sign
Dan,
language, Dan.
yeah, sign
Where?
language.
Did
No?
Bless you.
I've never seen it do that before.
Chat function. You need to use the chat.
Oh, that's weird. Weird.
Let's see, who else? How about Dean? I haven't heard anything from Dean today.
You there, Dean?
Are you there, Dean? Can you hear us? Maybe Dean can't unmute either. All right, Dean, you're unmuted.
I don't think he's there. I don't know what he's doing.
I heard it wrong.
Well, I'm going to mute you back. There you go. You're muting back again, Dean. Well, why don't we pray? I'm going to stop the recording here.